Hello, listeners. In this very special episode of Latch-Key Dads, we have the first part in a two-part interview with John Bermuda Schwartz. John is the longtime drummer and friend of Weird Al Yankovic. He was kind enough to come on our show and talk about all things Weird Al, as well as his very own cool and unique career. Enjoy!
Welcome to this very special episode of Latch-Key Dads. Greg and I are very excited to talk with our guest today. He has performed in 12 countries. He's performed on The Tonight Show, Rockin' New Year's Eve, Nickelodeon, The Simpsons, and The Late Show with Jimmy Fallon, to name a few. He has performed on 31 gold, platinum, and double platinum albums with 5 gold and platinum singles and 3 Grammy Awards. We could go on, but without further ado, we welcome John Bermuda Schwartz, longtime friend and drummer for none other than Weird Al Yankovic. Thanks for joining us today, John.
Oh, thank you. Very good to be here.
So you've archived an incredible collection of photos and memorabilia over the years, and you just released your second book, Lights, Camera, Accordion, Eye-Popping Photographs of Weird Al Yankovic, 1981 to 2006. That's a mouthful. Tell us about the process of sifting through all those amazing pieces of history and photographs.
Wow. Well, it's fortunately the publisher and editors of the book were able to go through and sort out photos. I mean, I narrowed down several thousand photos to about 850, and I couldn't get past that. I thought they were all great, and we just couldn't do a book that big.
Sure.
And I ran them by all the guys in the band. I ran them by Al. I said, please, if there's anything in here you don't like, I mean, help me out. I need to get the number down. Anything you can do. And I think I was able to shave about 5 photos off the whole thing. So they were of no help at all. They liked them all too. But the editors of the book, Shane and Desiree Lewis, who are Al fans as well, had a bit of a different eye on the photos than obviously I could. And they were able to get them down to about 301 photos, I think, are in all the chapters. And I could not have done that. And they made really good choices. I mean, there was almost nothing that I thought should have been in there that didn't make it. I mean, all the photos really deserve to be there. And very happy that they could do that, because I couldn't do it. It's, too subjective for me.
Yeah. And going through it, I mean, the photos that are in there, they're so fun. And I mean, obviously for us to be able to kind of be on the journey to some level and see all that history is really fun. So.
Well, thanks. Well, again, the editors did a good job. They put the stuff out there that they knew the fans would like. And they chose wisely, so I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, John, if I may, I would just like to say that I'm really a big fan of you and the band and Weird Al ever since I was 10 years old. You know,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, Weird Al was a big, fantastic part of my childhood. Growing up, it was great knowing that it was okay to be weird. So that was really cool.
It's not only okay, it's very profitable as well.
Apparently. Eh?
Yeah.
So with the book that your new book, Lights, Camera, Accordion, it's really cool. Looking through all those great pictures made me feel like I was reliving parts of my youth all over again. And when you have a subject as iconic as Weird Al, it's great to see a retrospect of all of those cool and crazy things you guys did together. Mm-hmm. Was there any specific pictures that maybe you'd forgotten about, and then when you came across them, like made you pause and smile?
Well, there were several like that. I generally, when I had the photos developed, I almost always got 2 sets of prints. I kept one, so that was the archive, and then whoever was in the other prints, I would give them copies. But that wasn't really the rule. I mean, there were evidently a lot of those that I had either given away the only copy or given away both copies. And so I saw, as I was scanning all of these and reliving, my youth and my times with Al and all that, I was seeing a lot of photos that I didn't remember and that I know I don't have copies of. And it's like, that's a good photo. It's like, I understand why I must have given it away.
Yeah.
It was too good for me to keep. I don't know how many of those made it in the book. I mean, again, all of the photos in the book are special, and it was cool to relive my, a lot of my life. I mean, my photo archiving started, scanning stuff from the early 70s. So it wasn't just Al. It was everything in my life, but 25 years of that on film was Al as well. And that was the impetus for this book. I hadn't really considered a second book. But when I saw all these photos, I thought, there's a bunch of good color photos, even the ones that have been seen online, or some of them have been published before. Those were all taken from prints that I had scanned and retouched as best I could, but they were no better than the 4x6 prints that I had. And when I was seeing the scans from the negatives and how clean they were, and the dynamic in them, and how crisp they were, it was like, no, these are much better. These, anything they've seen before needs to be seen again, and a lot more. So there are some photos that are recognizable in there. It's like, I think I've seen that before. If it was online, unfortunately, they were seeing it probably in a very low res, crunchy state, because I started putting up photos back in 95 of Al and stuff. And with the screen resolutions in the day, 640 by 480, 800 by 600, if you had a nice screen, you had if you filled up the screen with a photo, by today's standards, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
And with dial-up speeds, I had to really crunch them. And so I wasn't that concerned about quality as much as just getting the photo out there. So any photos that they've seen before are either somewhat to vastly inferior to what's in the book. And I realized, I thought it's nice to put these out again, like remastering an old album and really improving it, as the Beatles have done many times. I think that's what's happened with these photos, and the reaction to the book has been really good, and I'm very happy about that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Kind of jumping into your process of being a drummer, playing drums on a Weird Al album must be like playing with a dozen different bands, all in one album. Did you ever have the opportunity to collaborate with any of the drummers, or did you just have to figure out how to replicate that music and all the percussion elements on your own?
I've met a number of the drummers who I've imitated. I don't think I ever chatted with them up front about any hints or tips they could give me. I was just kind of on my own. We were all on our own to listen carefully and replicate as carefully as our ability, and later with a lot of dance and rap music, as as the technology allowed us to. And we learned a lot. I grew a lot as a player. I grew a lot as a programmer and a sound designer for all of the drum and percussion sounds that I had to face later. I mean, there's not some magical producer somewhere that, did all that stuff for us. We were on our own, and we all learned and grew, and it was a great process. I'm way ahead of where I would have been without Al. So, I'm very happy for all of that.
Sure. And just as a quick follow-up, you guys started obviously before the internet was really even available to the public. Obviously that's changed over the course of the many years you've been performing. Has that sort of changed your process at all with the access to, information immediately? Has that played into it at all, or no?
Not as much. I mean, really, as far as doing the songs, it's just a listen. You listen carefully, and that's the first step. And there's really, that's about all you can do. I mean, I really had nowhere to go to ask anybody. Even with the internet, it was really, it's a great knowledge base, and it's a ton of information, but nobody was doing the things that I was doing. Nobody that I had access to anyway. I really couldn't ask anyone, how was this done, or what do you think this is? I just had to think of it myself, and I wasn't able to know what was done, so I had to listen carefully and think, well, what would I do? What are the elements of that sound? What would I do to replicate it, as closely as possible? How much of that is just studio magic? How much of it is EQ or processing that I'm really not set up to do, here at home? Although a lot of that I did figure out later on. Actually, I think eventually a lot of sounds and stuff became available online. A lot of different remixes of the songs. Some of these songs became available online. And I was able to go in and listen more carefully, in some cases actually sample some of the sounds if they were in the clear, and was able to, get pretty close. But, 90% of the time, honestly, I had to do this stuff all myself. And the internet was, in that respect, was of little help.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, the way you guys have been able to replicate the sounds and the score, behind the song, it's really amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Really cool. Speaking of like the band, it's amazing that the band has been together for, I think, 40 years. I can't think of any rock band that's been together that long. Is there some secret? How do you
There,
guys do?
there is another rock band. There's U2 has been together with the
Oh, okay.
same members, uh, slightly longer than we have, I think. No, you know what? There's and until recently, I guess Rush would have counted,
Yep.
although Neil Peart was not the original drummer, but close enough. And again until recently ZZ Top, but with the loss of was it Dusty Hill? I forgot who
Yes.
passed away. Yeah.
Yeah.
With his loss. Now that hasn't stopped them from going back out and playing, but with the original members, yeah, we're one of just a handful, literally U2 is the only other band that hasn't had any member changes and is still active. And I think their last album may have also been a #1 album. I'm not sure. So, we're in good company, or they're in good company, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of that, I mean, the great musicians and celebrities that you guys have come in contact with over the years, was there ever a moment where you kind of caught yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm talking with, John Bermuda Schwartz right now, that's really cool. What, did you ever have any of those moments yourself?
I probably, I mean, we've run into, thanks to Al, who'll have, different friends of his, well-known celebrities, other people in, and not just in music. They'll be backstage at the shows in some of the bigger cities, and it was cool to, say hello to Lin-Manuel Miranda, for example,
Sure.
to Alice Cooper. It's just, it was, there've been a few. And I've met a couple of my drumming heroes, not always through Al, but I've got to meet a number of drummers that I probably wouldn't have met if I was not Bermuda. I've just if I was just some other fanboy, I wouldn't have maybe met Hal Blaine, for example. So it's been pretty cool. I mean, it's there's a bit of celebrity that goes along with working for a celebrity, and that's nice.
I was just before the pandemic, I did get to go see Nick Mason of Pink Floyd. He came around with a saucer full of secrets, and he was in his 70s, and he sounded, just like the album. So he was going strong at 70 something, which is pretty cool.
Well, we may have that chance. We're all in our 60s. Actually, our bass player has crossed over. Not that way. No, he crossed over 70. He'll be, when we go back out in February and March, he will have just turned 72.
Wow.
Okay.
But you know what? As you approach that age, and as you get into your 60s, it's like you're not old. I mean, things happen, but you're not so old that you forget or can't play again, unless you have some physical thing going on. I feel, I'm 66, and I feel, and I hope I play like I did when I was 26. I think I play better. But I mean, I certainly don't play worse. I feel exactly the same. I'm not any more tired or worn out or anything at the end of a night. It's and I'm not in necessarily great shape. I just, the idea, when I was maybe in my 20s or 30s that I might still be playing drums in my 60s, probably, seemed very far-fetched. And now it's like, no, it's no different. I'm on Medicare now, so if anything happens, I'm good. And that's about it. But age is not, some people get old, in their 50s, and some people keep going into their 80s, or into their 90s. I mean, you got Tony Bennett, who is only just finally showing signs of, kind of not being able to keep up her performance. I mean, at 94 or 95 or whatever he is. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to passion. When you're passionate about something, age, it just doesn't matter. And,
well, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think age is again, barring any physical disabilities or issues, age is just a state of mind, and you can get old very quickly, or you can stay young forever. It's just, and I think it's kind of up to the individual. It's a very subjective choice, and I think I still think I'm in my 20s, in terms of the way I approach things.
Likewise.
I've just done a lot more, and I've got a lot more experience. But I mean, as far as my approach and attitude, I still feel young.
Yeah, cool.
So my son is 14 years old, William, and he plays the drums. Would you have any advice for such a young drummer to what could they do to get better? Or
listen to things. Listen to what other drummers are doing. Now granted, on a lot of today's music, a lot of the drum parts are programmed, but there's a ton of stuff where there are live players and, doing some cutting edge stuff and doing some simple stuff. I mean, give him a chance to listen to, the rock era is pretty lengthy. I mean, we're coming up on, 65 years of rock music that has not changed a whole lot. I mean, some of the technology has changed and, but, as far as the drummer, a lot of the stuff is the same. A lot of today's songs have the same parts that were going on in the 60s, some very basic rock parts. And that's what the drums basically do. So have him listen to those kind of have him listen to Ringo, have him listen to Fleetwood Mac, have him listen to, some I don't know, some Genesis, I mean, just have him listen to a bunch of different stuff. Some Frank Zappa maybe, and let him hear a lot of different styles of drumming, a lot of different techniques. A lot of different. Some things are very simple, some things are complicated, and they all have a place. You can tell him, and he won't believe it for a long time, but you can tell him that 9 out of 10 times playing the simpler stuff is where you make the money. If that's a concern, or if it's a concern about, and not just make the money, but as far as the amount of groups that out, 9 out of 10 drummers out there are playing kind of straight ahead stuff. And that's the stuff that people were playing, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And it still holds up. Now the sounds are a little bit different sometimes, but that's not always the drummer's job. That's somebody who's put the mic on the drum and goes back, into a control room or out to the front of house and tweaks it. That's their job, to control some of the sounds. But as far as the parts, 9 out of 10 times, very, very straight ahead stuff. But it's also good to know more. It's good to know a lot more than you do. So have him learn it all, and have him get together with friends of his that are learning guitars, piano, bass, horn players maybe. Jazz is good. Jazz and swing, kind of stuff. Old, if there's some old Dixieland charts you can get, have him play some Beatles songs, have him play some Stones, introduce him to Led Zeppelin. There's just Keith Moon with the Who. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but again, you would never do those kind of parts with anyone but the Who. But yeah, just have him listen to a lot of stuff, and try different things, and he'll find certain things he likes. He may just like playing straight ahead stuff, like I like playing straight ahead stuff, and those are the kind of gigs I do, and I've been lucky to have it turn into a career.
Very cool. Thank you.
And speaking to that, as far as the process of just for you to drum on out whether it be at a gig or out on tour, was there any time where something extremely unexpected happened, where you'd put it in the category of a weird situation that either something technically went wrong, or something like that?
Not with me so much as with our well, first off, Al has walked off the front of the stage a few times, and I should remind people that that's anywhere from like 4 to 6 feet, to where the audience sits.
Sure.
And he just, with the lights in his eyes, he just didn't know where the front of the stage, and wearing his accordion. There were 2 occasions where that happened, and and he's in good shape. I mean, a fall like that, I remember sometime back in the 90s, or he had taken a spill. We were playing up north in California, and it was an outdoor stage, and he had taken, was during our medley of songs, and he had the accordion on and was doing something, and all of a sudden it stopped, and we heard this kind of accordion groan, and we looked over, and Al was gone, and he had fallen off the front of the stage. And I think somebody, when it was, as our guys were going down to get him, I think I heard something like drum solo, to take a little time. Anyway, he came back and finished the show. He was moving a little slow, and went to the hospital, and they looked at his leg, and he'd sprained his thigh or his leg or something. But any of the rest of us, we would have broken a leg or an arm or a rib or something like that. And but and on the technology side, for many years we've been using video, and audio tracks keyed off the video, to bring in, certain horn parts or maybe certain female vocals, things percussion parts, things that as a 4-piece band plus Al up front, we just can't do, and at the risk of not playing the song, sort of playing a bar band version of a song, we want to do, people pay good money to come in. We want to make it sound, full, not always just like the record, but, we want to try. And so we have different video things, eventually we got into like computer servers for both the audio and video. And I remember specifically back in 2003, we had a server that was constantly breaking down and constantly just like freezing, like crashing, I guess. Yeah. And we and sometimes we could get, depending on what the song was, sometimes we would get through and we'd finish the song and it would just, the audio and the video would somehow just go away, but we would keep playing and it would be okay. But there were some songs that very heavily depended on that, and it would stop and we would just be hung out to dry on stage. And this happened many, 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 many times. And until we eventually replaced the server and continued to replace servers until we got, more capable gear. But there was a period, and it was back in 2003, and that server would crash almost every night, at least once during the show. So we had to have these contingency plans about, well, when the server crashes, and of course it's going to, we just don't know when, because it'll be a different song each time. If it crashes at a time when we're backstage and the video's running while we're doing a costume change and the audience is watching the video and it just stops, you got dead air. Well, if we're all backstage, whoever is the first to be changed into their to their costume or clothes or whatever would go out and they would do a specific shtick to buy some time while they rebooted the server. My shtick was to go out and there's this kind of old children's poem from Europe called the Tale of Little Suck-a-Thumb, and it was a story about, and it's something that I learned when I was like 13, and it's just, Al can call it, and I could just recite it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And so that was my bit. If only Al was doing the costume change and it was between songs, the video was running and we were all just on stage just waiting for him to come out and the video went down, we would go into a specific song. We would go into Wipeout, for example, and we would play it like in different keys. Everyone would be in another key, and we would just do like a standard arrangement so that the server could be rebooted and the audience was entertained. If we were all on stage doing a song and it crashed in the middle of a song, and again, depending on which song, then we would at that point go into Radio by Elvis Costello. And there's kind of a story behind that when Elvis appeared on Saturday Night Live and was going to do Radio, which is a slam at the broadcast industry. Mm-hmm. And the producer said, we don't want you to do that song. And Elvis said, oh, all right. And they came out and they started to do this other song. I forgot what it was. And Elvis says, wait a minute, stop. There's no reason to do this song here. Radio. And they went into Radio, much to the consternation of the producers, and they were not on the show again for another 20 years. Anyway, so that's our bit. The server would go down, we sort of just like kind of stop, and Al would go, there's no reason to do this song here. Radio. We would go into that. So we not only were kind of under the gun the whole night wondering when it was going to happen, but we had to remember what to do. And so that was a constant problem. That happened literally every night during the 2003 tour until we replaced that server. We went through several more iterations of servers until eventually a few years ago we switched to Mac Pros, and those worked very well. We had like a redundant system, and those worked very well, and which we continue to use now, I think. I mean, I'm not on that end of the things, but I mean, I know when that happened, and that we rarely have a problem. I mean, it's extremely rare, which is great for our comfort level on stage, because we're not kind of just wondering when the boom is going to come down. We can actually play and enjoy what we're doing without wondering about when we're going to have to bail.
Yeah. The fire drill aspect is never fun. So.
Yeah. So it's been a long time since anything horrible happened, but there have been a couple. So again, not me. I mean, I don't even know if I've even broken a snare head or anything, where I had to like, everything has just changed, until I can get another snare up there. Almost no problems for me. So, fingers crossed.
Actually, you mentioned something, snare drum. I had heard some interesting stats about the number of drums that you have. And at the time, I think you had 111 snare drums. Has that number changed at all? Or are you still in that same world of 111?
It's either 110 or 111.
Wow.
I don't, it seems like I sold a snare, although I can't imagine why. So it's either, I think 111 sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's but honestly, there's only about 5 of them that I use.
Mhm.
And most of the time there's only 2 or 3. So, truth be told, there's some collectible snares in there, but as far as what I use, I could certainly offload, 98% of them. And someday, at some point I will.
So, John, if you were going to go on a long road trip with no internet access, but you had a CD player, what are some of the CDs you would bring with you?
Oh boy. Well, if no internet, no, I wouldn't go. I would stay home. No, so my desert island discs is what
Pretty much,
they used to call it, the kids call it. Yeah. It's hard to say. I still like all of the old groups I grew up with. I mean, I don't listen to the Beatles every day anymore, but I certainly have a complete Beatles collection, all the reissued, remastered stuff, 150 bootleg CDs, all of the solo stuff by all of the guys. A lot of that Zappa I would take. There's the Monkees I love, Turtles, Rolling Stones. It took a while. At the time I wasn't really into them, but eventually I learned to like Led Zeppelin a lot. I like a lot of different stuff. I have to look at my CD collection here. It starts roughly with ABBA, and it goes ABBA to Zappa. And Elvis, big fan of Elvis Costello, Devo. So again, a lot of 60s, 70s, 80s stuff.
Okay.
But I like Nirvana as well. I mean, I would have liked them even if we hadn't done, one of their songs and then done an original based on their songs. I like a lot of almost anything Motown. So again, 60s and some 70s stuff. But really mostly older stuff. It would be hard pressed to get me to bring anything much past about 2000. And as the decades, go on from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it diminishes a little bit. Very heavy on the 60s, pretty heavy on the 70s, a little less of the well, I was a big fan of new wave stuff and some of the rock coming out in the 80s. But by the 90s, I'd kind of, lost track of a lot of the bands and the musical styles. And past 2000, not a whole lot.
I know that you had mentioned just now Led Zeppelin, and I know they're very tight on what people can use. They don't allow much commercialization, but they did let you use a song in Trapped in the Drive-Thru, which is pretty cool, right? The
yeah. Well, thank you very much. You know that we recorded that.
Yes.
That's not.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's not a sample. Although people have accused us of oh, that's great. They let you use a sample. And it's like, no, they didn't. But there's a and if you A-B'd them, they're not quite. It's not quite. John Bonham had a certain feel. There was a certain lilt to the way he played, and that's hard to do. You can play the parts, but it doesn't ever quite feel like Bonham. It doesn't ever quite feel like Ringo. It's just they had a certain feel that they did, and that's what made them who they are and what made them valuable to those bands. Why someone else just can't come in and do those things and have it be quite the same. But there's more information behind us using that clip and recording that. That was I think that was Al's original choice. Now that doesn't mean anything till I tell you the rest.
Okay.
And he had not heard back from the Led Zeppelin people, and he thought, we better explore something else. We'll how about AC/DC, like Back in Black? It had to be about 11 or 13-second instrumental piece that was highly recognizable. And so there's that, and they got back pretty quick and said no. And Al thought, well, there's one, I got one last thing in my pocket. We can always do My Sharona, and because I know that we can do that because we've done it. So we know we can do that. And that's recognizable, and we'll go in, we'll record that, and we did. So I have a recording of us doing the opening for My Sharona. Literally the week we were in the studio, Led Zeppelin's people got back and said, okay, yeah, you can go ahead and use the bit from Black Dog. And so we had this other thing in the can already, but that was what Al wanted. And so we recorded that. And so I have a mixed recording of us doing the opening for My Sharona. And that sounds like the Knack. It really does sound like the Knack. Led Zeppelin's a little harder to get, but in context, it sounded great.
Oh yeah.
And more than a few people have said, oh, you just, that was cool of them to let you use a sample of their song. It's like, well, it was cool for them to, let us, use it for a percentage, and we recorded it, and that is our recording of that. So I that was cool. Yeah, and when we would do the song live, we would do, I don't know if we did the whole, it was like an 11-minute piece or something.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if we did the entire 11 minutes, but whatever it was we did, there wasn't a whole lot of live playing because almost all of it was on a track, and there was a video. I think there might have been a video running, and Al was singing, except when it came to the Led Zeppelin part, and we would come in and we would play it,
rock,
and then we would have to get out of it, and then in the meantime the track is still running because it has to come back in, and so that's my job, to make sure the timing was right and that we started and ended in the right place. And, it took a couple of times to get through it and get the feel of it, but after that it was really seamless. It was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun to do that.
It's a great song. It really, I love that one.
Oh, thanks.
You mentioned, obviously the movie just recently came out. For you, what was it like to see yourself portrayed by Tommy O'Brien in the movie? To see, although a version of what it might have been like. What was that like, though, to see yourself up on the screen?
It was really interesting. I had actually and there's like 20 or 22 guys that had auditioned for my part, and I've got all of their audition tapes.
Oh, cool.
Not that, and I wasn't involved in the selection process. That's not why I have them. It's just Al, sent those. He said, I thought you might like to have these. And I said, oh, that's pretty cool. So I got a chance to watch all these guys, one, being me, but two, saying things that I never said. I mean, and in situations that never happened. Again, the movie is largely not true.
Sure.
And the very few facts in there. The fact that they used our real names is pretty good. It was very surreal to watch that. And Al knew early on that Tommy was one of the top choices. He says, what do you think? What do you think of these two or three guys in particular? And I had to agree that Tommy was really good, but he's also, and this is the same for the guys who play Jim and Steve, they also play the instruments that we play. Tommy's a drummer here in LA, and I have not met him in person, but I got in touch with him by email not long ago, and I've only been home from the tour a short time, but at some point I want to get a chance to meet him. But very nice guy, and one of the things he told me was in studying for the part, because now he's playing as a drummer, he's now playing the part of a drummer. So he's like a little more into this than just some other role that's maybe not musically oriented. So he said, and kind of, I know you shot a lot of pictures. I was thinking of bringing a camera and just kind of holding it in every scene, and just always having a camera with me, like you would have done. I said that would have been so cool. I mean, Al would have absolutely loved that, and would have got it, and that would just be one of those little Easter eggs for the fans that know, and they all know that I always had a camera around. I said, Tommy, you should have done it. You should have brought the camera. I mean, they can Photoshop it in or something, I guess. I don't know what they do for digital effects or whatever.
Yeah.
CGI, yeah.
We hope you enjoyed the first part of our interview with John Bermuda Schwartz. Check out our next episode where John talks about meeting Weird Al and the beginning of his career.
Can't get enough Latch-Key Dad content? Well, check out latchkeydads.com.
That's right, Greg. On our website, we've got a plethora of photos from each episode, as well as other interesting links to content that we talk about on the show.
Yeah, Tim, I really enjoy all the pictures that you put up there, as they really bring the episode home.
Yeah, I guess I'm not afraid to show those embarrassing photos of my childhood. So, yeah, we encourage you to check out the website, latchkeydads.com, for all that content.
Excellent. And if you have a moment, check out our shop page where we've got really cool keychains for sale. If you don't know what to get your dad for Christmas, the holidays, Father's Day, birthday, check it out. It's a cool gift. Tim, did you know that listeners should like, review, and subscribe to the Latch-Key Dads podcast?
No. But now I know.
No,
Now he's at the bottom.